What happened to 30 years? It's amazing, isn't it? Can you believe it's 30 years ago, guys?
Well, not really, because it's probably 31 because we didn't have a game in 2000. I just didn't mean to check it, Macca. But
Thanks,
look,
Sheeds.
yeah, 30. Gee, it's gone quick, hasn't it?
Well, Sheedy was here for a long time. I only had the one year as Collingwood coach in '95 when the first one. Sheedy's idea. I remember when the idea was proposed, and Gubby, Allen, and Sheeds, I guess, as much as any two people.
Got together, yeah.
We had met with Bruce Ruxton in the RSL and the two presidents, and Bruce was all for it. And from that point onwards, off it went. Yeah.
Who did Bruce bag for?
He was a Collingwood supporter, wasn't he, Bruce?
Amazing how it all happens, ladies and gentlemen. If it had been Melbourne, he would have said, no way, Jose. But lovely guy.
Did you think that it was going to be every year and just get bigger and bigger and bigger when you first started?
No, when you put ideas up, you don't know whether they're going to go, yes or no. But now when it's sold out in February and a lot of people can't get a ticket, really either this year basically Collingwood members or last year Essendon members, and it was 29 years later was another draw. Well, actually 30, yeah, so you wouldn't have believed that. So no, I don't think so. Lee's been living in Queensland for a while. How do people see it from up there, mate?
Well, probably just observe it from afar. In all honesty, it's very much a sort of Melbourne thing. But I think the whole concept of an event around a sporting contest has become huge in this last 30 odd years, hasn't it? Really, I mean, the AFL has about 20 events a year at least.
Leigh, what are your recollections of arriving at the game? I think from memory there was just so many people outside. It was just a chaotic sort of moment. No one knew how many.
Well, I think for some reason we decided to get a bus from Victoria Park to the MCG, thinking it would be a big crowd, and I think it was before the reserve seat days, so it was first in, best dressed. And my greatest memory was, it must have been the northern stand being partly done, because the rooms were in the southern stand, the Shane Warne stand. And I remember walking, the bus arrived, walked into the rooms and walked out onto the ground and looked around. The stadium was full, like an hour and a half before the game. The whole stadium was full, but silent. It was just people sitting there who knew they had to get there early to get a seat. And obviously, as we know, 20-odd thousand couldn't get in. So that was the strongest memory I've got of the day. Yeah.
What did you say to the group before both coaches? We'll start with you, Leigh. What did you say to the group before the game?
I can't remember what I said to the Lions the last time, three-quarter time. No, I don't know. I honestly can't remember 30 years ago what I was said pre-game.
Do you recall, Leigh, in the build-up to the game, did you know how big it was going to be even that week, or were you just thinking this is just essentially another game?
No, a different game. I don't think anyone could necessarily foresee what was going to happen. It would be first of a gigantic. I guess the thought was it'd be an annual event forever. That would have been the thought when it first started. But you didn't really know. I didn't know what was going to transpire. And it's been a fantastic event. I mean, it sort of makes one of the things, I guess, with footy teams is the team's got to be bigger than the individual, and this is bigger than the sport, let alone the football teams. This whole occasion, that's what it's become, and the sanctity of it all is something I think we've all really proud of. I only had a very little bit to do with the beginning game, but those who have actually driven it over the last 3 decades, it's become a marvellous event.
Kevin, have you got a favourite moment other than the first and ones that don't really capture the same amount of attention as others?
I think the first game was very important for the history of the game, to be honest. I played the game in 1977. It was Richmond versus Collingwood, and 84,000 turned up. That was the first time I ever thought that, wow, on an ANZAC Day, 74,000 playing Collingwood and Richmond. So that was sitting there for quite some time before, I went overseas and did some courses on creative thinking and all that sort of stuff. And I come back and probably put that idea up, and it got through all the corridors of power, as they say. I'm glad it did, because being an ex-serviceman, I'm very proud of what our men and women have done in the war zones of the history of our country. And I think Collingwood was the right club to pick, because they've been to more grand finals than anybody. Obviously haven't won them because they're very hard to win. And the fans turn up. They turn up. And they turn up and they just keep turning up. So we could have picked 3 other clubs, but we picked the one that never ever alter their attitude towards their club. They could be down the bottom for a year or two, and they just keep turning up. They're like they just like coming over the hills every time, down Punt Road and from everywhere. They're everywhere, Collingwood.
Sorry.
Will it be particularly special this time around, being the anniversary, like reflecting back on what it's done, I guess educationally as well as a football sense, like this time around?
Oh, look, I think the education part of it's been brilliant, because a lot of people haven't seen any war. We live in a pretty easygoing society, which our defence forces allow us to with our allies, and obviously our police force and military and Australian Defence and Police Force. So we're still a lucky country in some ways. Got probably slightly lazy, and I think we need these sorts of games that can actually make Australians feel about how great the country can still be. And we do it with sport, we do it with music, and we do it with some of our great actors around the world. So we punch well above our weight at the Olympics, and we certainly do in having the only country that has 4 football codes in the world, and we have it, which I think is important. So getting a game like this and showing it to the whole of Australia and is pretty good. Maybe one day you could even take it to the Brisbane Olympics, you don't know.